Okay. All right. So our topic for today is MAND compliance. But I like to start with a case study before I get to the main topic. I'll talk about a client that I'm currently working with. I just started working with him. He's 11 years old, and his method of communication is PEX, just started a couple of months ago. So it's quite basic. And this client has severe problem behavior daily, sometimes multiple times a day, severe self-injurious behavior, like head banging on hard surfaces, um, blood gushing out, aggression towards his mom, disrobing and urination, tantrums that last sometimes more than an hour, sometimes up to 3 hours. The struggle with him so far is there are no clear patterns of antecedents and triggers. So is it attention? Is it to access tangibles? Is it to escape demand? It's very, very complicated. Um, and he has a long history. He's gone through a lot of providers, a lot of centers. So, of course, at this point, I'm trying to help him. I'm trying to teach him functional communication to reduce the challenging behavior in order to give him what he wants. But where to begin? That's the big question. Next slide. Sorry, I finished this one. Next slide. Okay, so I went over an interview with his mom to try and or arrange for a functional analysis. And as you can see from the mom's responses, it's very muddled. So the question, for example, what seems to trigger the problem behavior? She has so many answers. He wants to communicate something but cannot. For example, no, I want to go to a different place. Feeling bored, especially during weekends. Sensory stimulation, change in routine. Want to have something that he cannot have. Example, going out. So more of her answers at the next page. What do you think he is trying to communicate with his problem behavior, if anything? That he wants to go to a certain place, that he's bored or wants attention, feeling hungry, tired, irritated, sometimes due to self-stimulation. And when I spoke to mom also, and like the conversations that she expressed that sometimes he engages in those behaviors when she presents a non-preferred demand or when they are going to, it's kind of escape, like he doesn't want to go to a certain place. So at the end of it, like because there was a lot of information and mom couldn't really pinpoint a specific like trigger, clear antecedent for the behavior, and it was almost everything. And I didn't know where to begin with the FA with this client because I was worried his behavior is so severe. I didn't want to trigger the behavior and then not have the tools to turn it off, for the functional analysis to be successful. So I haven't done that yet, but like I said, he's a new client. So as I was thinking, next slide, as I was thinking, like, what's next? What do I do? What's the right approach with this client? I came across this paper that I'm going to talk about today. Let's move on to the next slide. Have you heard of the term MAND compliance before? Yeah? Some yes, some no. Okay. It was actually new to me. I might have heard it before, but I forgot. So when I came across the paper, I was intrigued. And can you move on to the next slide? The paper that I'm going to talk about today is MAND compliance as a contingency controlling problem behavior, a systematic review by Professor Greg Hanley, of course. I talk about him every time, but it just happens to be his paper. So I'll take us through it step by step, and then we we can have a discussion about it. Okay, next slide. Okay, so the origin of the term manned compliance comes from a study by Bowman et al. 1997. In that study, there were two children for whom standard functional analyses were inconclusive. So when they tried the usual conditions of attention, escape, control, and attention. Which one did I not say? Attention, escape, access to tangibles, and sensory control. Yeah. So there was no clear condition that stood out. The results were inconclusive. So Bowman and colleagues came up with this alternative contingency, as they called a dynamic contingency, in which severe problem behavior was evoked by adult non-compliance with a variety of child mands, which occurred at high rates and was reinforced by adult compliance with subsequent mands. Okay, so this is how they define mand compliance. And it's okay if it's not clear right now. We'll talk more about it, and I think as we go through the slides, it will become more clear. All right, next slide. Okay, so using this new contingency, Bowman and colleagues demonstrated control over problem behavior through this unique contingency. And using this figure, we can try to understand it further. So the EO, the establishing operation in the FA, was that the adult stops complying with earlier requests by actively engaging in compatible activities. Okay, and then one of two things would happen. Either the child would request that the child would request that the adult continues with the activity, and in which case the request was ignored, or the child would engage in problem behavior, and then as part of the FA, the adult would resume the child's specified activity and reinforce all requests for 30 seconds. So using this contingency, they were able to demonstrate control over problem behavior. And this contingency was described by Bowman and colleagues as distinct from commonly evaluated contingencies, because the children specified the reinforcers verbally, like using requests, which appear to influence establishing operations. Let's see. In the test, like in the functional analysis, after a 2-minute period where the adult complied with all the child's requests, the programmed EO involved the adult actively engaging in activity incompatible with that which the child specified, okay, thereby not complying with earlier requests. And then requests made by the child during the EO period was ignored, but any problem behavior resulted in the immediate resumption of the child-specified activity, as well as reinforcement of subsequent requests for a 30-second interval. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so using that, within that study, then the next step after the FA was successful and they showed control over the problem behavior, children were taught a replacement behavior, which was functional communication, a functional communication response that produced a period of manned compliance, while problem behavior was placed on extinction. Okay, so that's the treatment. They taught the children a functional communication response that got them a period of manned compliance with the adults, and the problem behavior was placed on extinction. And this intervention eliminated problem behavior, and it was successful. And then later on, a lot of other studies replicated the original study by Bowman and colleagues and assessed manned compliance contingency in isolation. Usually, they did that after the original FA was inconclusive, using standard functional analyses. And then a growing number of research also included contingencies and initial interview informed synthesized contingency analysis. So this is the ESCA, which I believe was introduced by Greg Hanley about 10 years ago. And in the ESCA, they included this new contingency MAND compliance within the initial interview.
Sorry, do you mean to change the PowerPoint, or is this still the same PowerPoint?
It is. Now we're done with it. Let's move on to the next slide. Okay. Thank you. All right, next. So in the literature, the purpose of this paper that I'm discussing today is that it is suggested that MAND compliance may be a lot more prevalent as a controlling contingency for problem behavior than its representation in the literature so far. Okay, so the authors of this paper are suggesting that it is a lot more common than we've seen in the literature so far. Let's move on to the next slide. Okay, the studies included in the article we are discussing today are 22 in total, after a lot of articles were excluded for various reasons. And the research yielded 22 articles that reported a functional analysis of problem behavior in which MAND compliance was tested as a condition. So these studies, the 22 that were included, some of them included the MAND compliance contingency after ruling out common reinforcers through standard FA, and others included MAND compliance following indirect and descriptive assessment with caregivers, parents, or therapists. So through the conversation and this indirect descriptive type of assessment, they came to the conclusion that this child's behavior is probably controlled by MAND compliance. And the figure on the right shows the cumulative publications and independent analyses evaluating MAND compliance. So as you can see, there is a rise since 2015. There's an increase in the analyses that evaluate MAND compliance as a contingency. So it's becoming more prevalent in the research. Do you guys have any questions so far? No? All right. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Okay. In the previous slide, we talked about indirect and descriptive assessments to include MAND compliance as part of the FA. And in those studies, they would include this contingency when the parents or caregivers or therapists describe the child's behavior as like the participants emitted frequent requests for example, items like computers, activities, social interactions, like conversing about a specific topic, environmental arrangements, having items organized in a certain way, or requesting for adults to behave in particular ways, imitating a cartoon character, for example, or so on. And problem behavior was likely to occur when one of those requests was ignored or denied, and was likely to persist and even escalate until the adult granted requests. So under this contingency, the child would ask for something repeatedly, like frequent requests, and the denial of a request would result in challenging behavior. And across all reviewed studies, researchers reported similar caregiver reports and observations that can be characterized as so. And based on these descriptions, future research and practitioners should consider screening for the possible relevance of MEND compliance to problem behavior through indirect and descriptive assessment prior to conducting a traditional FA. That's the suggestion by the authors of the paper. Okay, next. Okay, the participants that were included in the study and the articles covered in the study, the majority of them, 68%, were diagnosed with autism, and their language abilities varied. As you can see in the figure on the right, most of them were fluent, but not all of them. There were some who communicated using short, disfluent sentences, some with one-word utterances, and others were nonverbal. And a few participants were unspecified, as in it was not clearly mentioned in the study what their language ability was. And the range in language ability of the children included in the review suggests that the effects of MEND compliance on problem behavior may have generality beyond children with strong language skills. So it's not only children who have fluent language that would engage in challenging behavior under this contingency. It also includes children who are nonverbal or who have minimal language abilities. For example, in the study, they mention children who use vague and unintelligible requests, others who use pointing to pictures or pointing to the direction of preferred location. And when those requests were denied, children engaged in challenging behaviors. The next slide. Okay. Now, this slide is about the different types of different variations of functional analyses that were used in the studies, right? Because in this systematic review of the literature, they've included 22 studies. So this figure just sums up the different variations that were used in the literature to test for MEND compliance as a contingency. The establishing operation, usually which is ignoring requests, started by the adult stopping. The contingency started with the adult stopping compliance with earlier requests. Some studies had a signal, like, for example, saying that the parent or the adult would say, "Your way is all done," or presenting a card. And then there were three variations. The adult would either stop by engaging in an incompatible activity or rearranging the environment, or by directing the child to engage in incompatible activity, for example, taking the child to do a task, or by both, engaging in incompatible activity and directing the child to as well. And then when the child engages in problem behavior, there were a couple of different scenarios. Either the adult reinstates previous environmental arrangements, or the adult reinforces most recent requests. But in all cases, the adult resumes child-directed activity and complies with all requests for 20 to 60 seconds. And despite the variations and the differences, it's not very important that we focus on those right now. But the important thing to note is that all types of variations depicted in this figure were successful in achieving differentiated analysis across studies. So in all the studies that they included, the FAs that included the MEND compliance contingency were successful at depicting the problem behavior was controlled by this contingency. Does anyone have questions? Good, clear so far? Okay, moving on. One issue that they would run into during the analysis was the emission of unreasonable demands during reinforcement periods, which is the control condition, right? So during the control condition, the reinforcement period, you don't want any problem behavior. The child should be like in heaven. However, sometimes during this period, children would ask for unreasonable things. So, for example, asking to go to a movie theater, asking to buy a new toy, or asking for things that can be inconvenient to others, like asking for access to the laptop or projector that is being used in the classroom. So in those cases, it's an issue because these demands cannot be immediately reinforced, and their denial may then evoke problem behavior, and then that would affect the results of the analysis. And given that many individuals with problem behavior, sensitive demand compliance are characterized by their engagement in high rates of demands, both reasonable and unreasonable, researchers should further investigate and describe strategies for addressing unreasonable demands during analyses, because so far there is no clear plan. I think what they did in most of the included studies is when the child asked for an unreasonable demand, they tried to alter their request to something they can actually grant the child. So they weren't refusing, they weren't saying no, but they were making alterations to make it more reasonable. Okay, moving on to the next slide. All right. The other interesting thing about the demand compliance contingency is its synthesized nature, because it synthesizes both positive and negative reinforcement in two general ways. In one manner, the child can demand for the production and the termination of stimuli during their period of reinforcement. So, for example, if the child asks the adult to switch seats, like to get up from one seat and go to the next seat, then it necessarily involves terminating one stimuli, sitting in one seat, and producing another, i.e. moving to the next seat. So it's not as black and white or as straightforward as the standard functions of behavior that we typically talk about. It's not just escape or avoidance. It's not just access to tangible. It's more synthesized, I guess, because at the same time, the child would be asking to terminate one thing that's non-preferred to them, and at the same time, asking to produce another stimulus that is preferred to them. And previously, this was referred to as escape to tangible or attention by Greg Hanley, I believe. So because the child is escaping from a non-preferred stimuli to either a tangible or to attention or to both even. So they're not just escaping to nothing. They are terminating one negative. They're just terminating one stimulus and producing another one. And problem behavior produced then both. Oh, sorry, I think I covered this point. I'm not going to repeat myself again. I think it's clear, right? Yeah? Okay, let's move on to the next slide. All right, the next thing that the studies covered was the treatment. So up to this point, we talked about the functional analysis aspect and how all studies were successful at showing control over the behavior. So the next step was the treatment. And all treatments involved some form of differential reinforcement of alternative behavior. And in most cases, an omnibus request was taught that produced a a brief period of child-directed activity, and then problem behavior was placed on extinction. In some of the studies, cooperation with certain adult directives was required to produce reinforcement. And all treatments reported in the literature were successful in reducing levels of problem behavior and strengthening alternative behavior, and were proven effective. And all treatments reported were successful. So through various single subject experimental designs. So despite the variations in the treatment, as long as they had included an element of functional communication training and putting the behavior on extinction, the treatments were successful. The variations included, like, some studies had tasks for the children. Some used, let me see if I have that, systematic, sorry, let's see. I don't think I wrote that down, but they would systematically teach the child to tolerate the non-preferred stimuli. Okay, the next slide, I have a video. Jean, can you click on the link? It was the only relevant video I could find, and I thought, it would be nice to include something visual that we can watch. We can't see it yet, I think. You're only sharing the PowerPoint. Jean, is the video playing?
Lions eat zebras. He's hiding in a cave. No. No. He's not hiding in a cave. He's running. He jumped over to another table. No. You come back. Okay, he's still here. Zebras don't jump. No, they don't. Oh, there we go. Oh, don't eat me. Don't eat me. Please, elephant, help. No elephant. Zebra. My zebra. Here you go. Not that cat. No, they're playing. Squirt water. Ow, wet. I'm wet. Oh, he's playing. Splash, splash, splash. Yeah, spin, spin, spin. Woo! Ah! Oh. La, 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 la. All done. Sure. Away. Okay.
All right, let's go back to the slide. Sorry. Okay, the general discussion in the article was that non-compliance has been demonstrated to influence problem behavior in 60 publications using differentiated functional analyses. And the non-compliance contingency has been described as a dynamic series of events and social interactions surrounding child SMANs. And it's been distinguished from commonly evaluated reinforcers such as attention, access, the tangibles, and so on. In this contingency, problem behavior is evoked across a variety of EO conditions and reinforced by A, the resumption of previously specified activities, B, compliance with subsequent demands, or both. Next slide. The function-based treatment was successful as opposed to just reinforcement-based treatment such as DROs or non-contingent reinforcement. With the function-based treatment, there was an element of functional communication training and thinning the reinforcement schedule. And the success of these treatments may be predicted by teaching an alternative response to problem behavior that yields a period during which MANs are reinforced. And so this was the end of the article. And this takes us to our group discussion. I will just briefly go back to the clients I talked about in the beginning, client Y. And I'm still at the early stages with this client. I still don't know what, like I said, what the exact triggers are. There is, I guess, some level of MAND compliance, but even if I were to start with teaching him a general MAND for granting him all his requests within a period of time, the issue with this client is even his mom, sometimes, or most of the time actually, when he engages in a tantrum or in challenging behavior, she has no idea what started it or what triggered it, which makes it even more difficult. I wish it was clearer, but we're still at that stage where we're trying to get to know him a little better. Can you move on to the next slide? Okay. Have you come across clients whose behavior fit into this category or whose behavior is reinforced by this contingency? And if so, what type of intervention did you try? Does anyone have experiences with clients that fit into this category?
I have. It's actually a student at my school. I have a huge issue with him right now, and right now he's taking a break from the school because just regular. Okay, for 2 years, just regular reinforcement-based treatment worked wonderfully for him, and then suddenly he would fly into uncontrollable rage if his request is denied, and he would I think would fit that description. He would mand a lot. He would mand over and over again that he wanted to draw on the wall with a crayon, and even if I say, okay, let's draw on paper, he would just flip.
Yeah.
So no success story there. But
Yeah.
this paper is amazing. It's almost like God sent for me.
Oh, that's great. I'm going to send this in the group as well. But yeah, the unreasonable man is what gets me. Like, sure, like we can work with reasonable man. We can teach a general man, like we can thin the reinforcement schedule. But when it's an unreasonable man, like, what do you do then?
Hi, sorry, I'm driving. So even I have an experience with something similar. The client keep demanding over and over and over. It could be unreasonable, could be something that he has to wait. So we've been trying to teach waiting for longer duration of time for the man to be delivered, the request to be accessible to the child. So, I mean, that's something that we've been doing, just including waiting program in the
Yeah. Oh, that's a good alternative behavior to work on. Awaiting. I remember I worked years ago. Stella and I were working with a client together, and we tried something similar to the treatment approach. But the child would keep asking for a swimming pool, and it was winter. And so again, running into the same issue of unreasonable demands. And we had to keep saying no, and the child would have problem behavior then. So yeah, that's quite difficult when the demands are not something we can grant the child. And we're trying, like when we're in the treatment period, like we're trying to teach new skills. Yeah.
For me, the unreasonable demand is one point that is difficult, but also another point that can be difficult, that was difficult for me, was for a client who's mostly nonverbal, and
Yeah.
we couldn't really figure out what the demand was for.
Yeah.
And it's like the problem that your client's parents are facing. We are kind of getting to be experts in observing the client's movements, behaviors, and we
Yeah.
can analyze through like the ABCs on what the function of the behavior is, what the child is demanding for. But
Yeah.
for the parents, it might seem like out of nowhere the
Exactly.
behavior is just
Yeah.
happening. And
Yeah.
some kids, and some
No, sorry,
kids
go
don't
on.
even have like very high MOs for anything. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the problem also that I can face with
Yeah.
clients. Yeah.
Can you, Jane, go back to the slides in the beginning with the mom's responses to the interview questions? You know, since we're here and I have great minds, so maybe you guys can help me out. Can you go to the previous slide also? Yeah, this one. So the client is his behavior is very, very confusing to me. So as you can see in question 11, do the problem behaviors reliably occur during any particular activities? The first answer that mom put down is during playing in the mall trampoline parks. That's his highest reinforcer. He loves it so much. That's where he wants to go all the time. But reliably, every time they go to the trampoline park, he engages in severe problem behavior, like within 10-15 minutes of them being there. No demands placed, like mom has not asked him to leave, nothing has happened. So I've never observed this myself because I don't work directly with the client. The RBT is consulting me with the RBT is working with him directly, and I'm overseeing the case. So I've only met him in person twice, but so I haven't seen him in the mall and how he behaves. But based on like long conversations with mom, trying to get to the bottom of this, I don't. Sorry,
Sorry.
go on,
Does
Santi.
he get overwhelmed with the environment?
I
Because
Possibly. I don't. I found.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
also going to say that maybe he wants to play in a certain way, and the environment
Yes.
restricts it. And
Uh,
after a while of
Definitely like
uplifting,
if if the reinforcer is there, but then there's aversive stimuli also present, then
mhm.
that can cause a behavior. You might want to check whether the child is sensitive to noise or whether it can cope with like a lot of people there, a lot of movement.
Yeah.
Sometimes that can be overwhelming and sort of backfire on the yeah.
But yeah, the difficulty is that mom has to make these observations since we're not there. And she did mention in one of our conversations that she deliberately takes him like in the early morning during I think weekdays or something, so that it's very quiet. Like she avoids crowds and busy times at the mall. Let's see, the other one, the next one is while watching his phone. And again, I guess you guys are right. The problem is I just don't know what the exact trigger is. So watching something on the phone, but then possibly something is not to his liking, something's not perfectly the way he wants it,
Yeah.
and that causes the tantrum. But mom doesn't know what the exact triggers
Can
are.
you
So
ask what video he's watching
I
on the
did,
phone?
yeah. Yeah,
And
and
is
mom
it something
answered.
the same
Yeah.
all the time?
He has a few different ones that he likes, but not always the exact same one. He has like a few preferred types of videos.
Mhm.
Yeah,
One
it's
thing
really
that
hard.
maybe it's always best to have someone like video
Yeah.
the situation if possible, but also some of the research that I've reading recently is about emotion and physical arousal.
Yeah.
So many autism spectrum disorder like kids, like people don't know how to discriminate between physical arousal and their emotions. So when they're physically too aroused, they might
Yeah.
get into
Yeah.
like the behavior problems also.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
Lack of self-regulation, I think that's
yeah, so
Mhm.
in like the early intervention ESDM model,
Mhm.
one of their criteria is to keep them in like a mid-level arousal so that they
Oh,
don't
yeah.
escalate too
Yeah,
much.
I remember that.
Yeah,
Okay.
so maybe that should
Yeah.
be considered also.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, I was
Another.
gonna second Jian's statement because I have not read those papers, but I've seen them across many clients.
Yeah.
First they were playing with it very nicely, and then they got more and more excited, and then bam, the
Yeah.
child
Yeah.
behavior happened.
Yeah. It could be something like that. Another theory I had was maybe he's predicting that his mom will ask him to leave, and yeah. But yeah, that's where I'm at now, still trying to work my way through it.
Are you having difficulty with the data collection?
Definitely, yes.
Have you ever tried a QR code before?
No.
So we've been because we work with support workers here
Okay.
in Australia, and so everything when it comes to data, everything has to be convenient, has to be fast, has to be doable. So our company started using QR codes for that.
Okay.
It's been actually quite nice because and you adjust it to meet the client's needs, but with some parents, they're very good because all the options are there, the antecedents and the behavior, the consequence. So all they have to do is click, 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 click.
Ah,
And
nice.
if you have a good QR code system, it can get you the graph
Oh,
to go with
cool.
it. So and it goes directly to you. So when the support worker, they just scan the code and they start filling the data in.
Mhm.
Once they close it, it goes directly to us so we
Nice.
can open it. And so I think like the trouble with parents is that it's really hard for them to not all parents, but some
Yeah.
parents they don't know what to put. They can't do an open-ended ABC analysis because
True.
they don't know what to put. So they need some guidance to the point where you might have to be specific on like what are the antecedents. Like you have to be descriptive in layperson language. You know what if it's an escape from task, or whether something was removed from the the R plus was removed, or whether he was a person who's asked to do something. So then at least that way they have an idea of what to
Yeah.
put in that situation.
That's
So that
really
might help you out with the ABCs.
Do you have an example that you can share with us in the group?
The what sort of?
An example of what it looks like that you can share with us in the group?
I can't. That's confidential.
Oh,
Yeah,
like,
yeah. But
how do you present the QR codes? I mean, like,
I'm
is it
making one.
printed?
I'll share you once I'm done with my dad, because my dad has Alzheimer. Sorry, not Alzheimer. He's borderline dementia. So I'm using. I'm planning to use a QR code for the caregiver to fill out, so then I can monitor on a daily basis. So if
Okay.
once that comes, once I'm done with that, I can share that. But unfortunately, I can't share the ones
Okay.
because they're
Yeah.
client.
Is it Google
Um,
Forms? Like, how do you create it? I mean,
See, I'm very lucky that my company already has a system in place.
okay.
I can ask permission to make one, but without a client's name.
Mm.
I can ask permission. Otherwise, I can use my dad's. The one that I'm using with my dad, we're trying to figure that using an open source. So if
Okay.
that works, I can tell you what to use.
Oh,
My,
brilliant. Okay.
my husband's figuring it out on that end.
Okay. No, don't worry about it if it's inconvenient or anything. But just, if you have it ready and like you don't mind sharing, it would be great for us to
Yeah,
get
sure.
an idea. But
Okay,
yeah,
I
don't
don't mind.
worry too much about it.
Yeah, better. I think it's better the one to use for my dad, because
Yeah.
it's more an open source. I think you guys can access the source, whereas the one that's from the clients that I have, it's more like an internal, and it's kind of hard to.
Yeah.
I'm not very tech savvy. That's why I married an IT guy.
So would you print out the QR code and have it like somewhere visible to the parents? Is that how you?
Yeah. So
Okay.
when you do it on the computer, like what it looks like when I do it with my client is that it's Microsoft, if I'm not mistaken. It's Microsoft, and then so I fill out the data, and then it has like when I'm ready, it'll generate a QR code. Then I send the QR code via email, or I'll print it out and then I'll give it to them in my session, and then all they have to do is just
Yeah.
it's been working well with the clients that are so hesitant to take data.
Okay. Nice. Okay.
So,
That's a good tip. Thank you.
all right.
Does anyone have anything else to add?
It's very hard to clients that are like that. They're very.
Yeah.
I think it also will take time because to figure things out as well, because like I think that emotional element that Ji-un had presented, it's I think like we always look at like the clear antecedents in the environmental stimuli, but we know that we know that they also have emotion. It's just that we don't know because they can't tell us what's going on. And then we rely so much on body language, and it's hard in this particular situation because you're not observing, because sometimes what you want to do is observe their face, because that's usually when they're flustered, you can tell that they're getting angry. And then sometimes it's a certain behavior or certain facial expression that goes with that stimulation. So I get hit a lot. A lot. And it's really hard to figure out like why he was hitting, because like sometimes he'll finish a task and then he'll hit me.
Yeah.
So like, well, it's not escape because you already did
Right.
the task.
Yeah.
So after consultation with,
because
so it falls under automatic reinforcement actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so it falls under automatic reinforcement. It's just sort of like, like sometimes like
Expression.
Frustration, right? So when we express our frustration, it's automatic, right? So yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, it's really hard to solve if we don't see the behavior. But it doesn't mean like it'll just take time, I think, to figure it out, and good data collection.
What I think is clear from the information provided by his mom is that it's not straightforward. It's not just access to tangibles. It's not just escape. There's definitely something he's trying to communicate through his. There's something very specific he's trying to communicate through his tantrums. And it's just now at this point about understanding what these things are that he's trying to communicate and giving him the language to do so.
I'm sorry, Amna, but this client can communicate, right? Still.
We just started PECS recently.
Oh,
He's been on PECS for about 2.5 months.
Is
so not
he
very
catching on? Like, is he
He's
learning
okay.
fast
Yeah,
on
yeah,
PECS?
he's okay. Yeah, phase
And
3.
Does he have very specific, like, he has very specific?
No, he does, like not general like food. He has specific food, specific toys, but not specific to the point where, he's saying, I want lights off at the trampoline,
No, I mean, like, his preference is really strong. Is his way of wanting things really specific? As in, so if you look at mom's answers, that there would be, we can make assumptions that he does want something very specific. Is
sometimes yes. Like sometimes, for example, an example of a tantrum that I remember I was told about. I of course didn't observe it myself, but I got the information from his therapist. Like, for example, he would open the fridge, he would look inside the fridge, and then he would have a tantrum. Like, he opened the fridge, he didn't find the thing he wanted, we were assuming, he had a tantrum.
Yeah, I don't know. We have like 30 seconds left, but I'd like to put in a good word about using a high-tech AAC device. I know your kid is like all over the place and he's like maybe throwing things. I don't know, but I've had success with using high-tech AAC device just because PECS is like, there's I feel like it's very limiting and doesn't provide the client with a robust vocabulary. And a high-tech AAC device also provides you with immediate reinforcement, like you press it and it says the word that you think he might want to have. And then also emotional regulation, right? Although my own kiddo, the one that I'm really struggling with, I've taught him emotional regulation. He does really well for 2 years, and then suddenly this shit happens. I don't know, but he usually like modeling emotions, and then tacting his emotions, and just the regular emotional regulation stuff. And I use a lot of I would recommend using high-tech AAC to.
Okay. Can you tell me more about it? Like,
sorry?
Can you tell me more about the high-tech AAC device? Is it a specific brand, a specific type, or like generally?
Is the kid English user? English speaking, or what language does he speak?
Oh, he's not verbal, but mom speaks English to him.
Parents, family.
Arab speaking family, but they can speak English, so they do communicate in English with the child.
So I don't know about so what I'm talking about is like an app type thing. I can.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah.
What app do you use?
I really like using the LAMP, language acquisition through motor planning, but it's in English.
That's fine.
Research, and research in AAC shows that you have to support bilingual language development and all that crap. But I mean, I completely agree, 100%. It's just that when we are here in Indonesia, it's just hard to find an app that will support
English. I know, same issue here. Yeah.
And then another one that is free is called Cboard, CBOARD. Yeah. So I would say maybe to aid with the FCT model a lot, and hopefully not have the iPad like broken.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That's really helpful.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Any,
Such
any
a good
last words?
session.
No?
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So Tanti, you're gonna present next in April, and do you think we need to plan another time, or maybe?
I